Welcome, Feel Free TV family. Welcome to another installment. Today, we have the New York State Assembly member, Kenny Burgos. Thanks, brother. Thanks for coming up on the show. And for people who don't know who Kenny is, he's an Assembly member representing the Bronx, the Soundview, Clawson Point, Castle Hill, Hunts Point area. He's born and raised in the Bronx. He attended a New York City public school. He graduated from Bronx High School of Science, received his bachelor's degree in economics received his bachelor's degree in economics from Albany University. And Kenny, once again, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. It's an honor, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So, what made you get into politics? Because you have a degree in economics. So, what made you switch and go into politics?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a switch. Politics is government, right? And government really found me, and because government is kind of everything wrapped into one, right? Government is economics. Government is, sociology. Government is psychology. Government, I mean, it's really, right, how we legislate and this policy and how we operate our world in our city. So I ended up in government after I went to school up in Albany, which is where our state capital is, just interning in the New York City Council, just worked my career through there. And here we are a few years later, and I ran for office last year in 2020.
Wow. So not too long ago, you visited Rikers Island.
Yeah.
So tell us about your experience and what did you find out?
Yeah, so a little before that. So because I am a state legislator, we have in state law the authority and the ability to visit any detention center unannounced anytime. So that's Rikers, that's Fishkill, that's any state penitentiary throughout the state of New York. And visiting Rikers is also in my district. I represent Rikers Island in the state assembly. So it was important to me to visit Rikers, to see what was going on there. And a big part of my campaign really was reforming and changing what our criminal justice space is and operates as right now. And that experience was eye-opening. I mean, we talk about this policy. We speak to formerly incarcerated individuals. I have family and friends that have unfortunately been on Rikers, but I don't think anything really matches up to you seeing it firsthand. This is an island, a massive island of torture, just deprivation, and it goes on right here in our backyard, and it's crazy to see and think about that. It's just a few miles away. So, I mean, I don't know how much you want me to dive in, because I can talk all day on it. I spent 6-7 hours there.
What was the most disturbing thing you think you saw on Rikers?
One of the, I guess, more disturbing things was really the solitary and confinement units. Also, there's the punitive segregation, which they won't call it solitary. About the same thing if you ask me. And that was where I saw young men, 19, 20 years old, who were just in this box with a slim window. I mean, no human interaction. Food is coming in through a slit. They're getting 1 hour a day, maybe, of recreation. And it's just crazy to think that we're treating humans really worse than what we treat our zoo animals.
That's true.
I mean, these are legitimate. These are brothers and sisters of our community that, for better or worse, have maybe committed a crime, maybe not, right? Because we know people on Rikers have not even been convicted, the majority of them. But even so, our systems should be rooted in rehabilitation, not punishment. Mm-hmm. Because we should want to make them better. We should want to give them resources and treatment to come back into society and live a valuable life, not go through this, recidivism and this cycle of going to Rikers, coming back out, going through the system, and then you're back in there a few weeks later. I mean, it does no benefit to them. It's no benefit to the government. It's no benefit to people in New York. It's no benefit to anyone. So we would be much better rooted in a system of rehabilitation. So seeing that was really just super disturbing for me.
Wow. So, because I've been on Rikers Island, unfortunately, I was on Rikers Island for 2 years
Wow.
before I was even sentenced, before I was convicted.
Crazy.
So I actually know what those brothers and sisters are going through firsthand. Have you noticed the smell on Rikers? Because I always notice this. There's a certain smell on Rikers. Have you noticed that when you went there?
It definitely wasn't a pleasant smell going on there, but I will tell you, John, unfortunately, I contracted COVID back in December, and my smell still has not fully recovered.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so for better or worse, some
Yeah.
bad things I can't smell, some good things I can't smell. So it was something distinct, but I really don't get things that are super potent. Like I have my candle right here in my office, and I can
Can't
like
even
this.
smell
I
it.
can't smell it.
Well, there's a distinct smell on Rikers Island, and I guess it's the pine, the disinfectant that they use, try to cover up all the other smells.
Okay.
And it's just like it's like if I smell pine right now, I automatically get a
It
flashback
just
to
triggers.
Rikers Island. Automatically.
That's
matter
PTSD, but that's PTSD, man. And you know, and this is the thing we don't talk about, right? Something as not as simple, but something as simple as smell triggers back memories for you of an unpleasant time on that island. Now, I mean, again, I don't know your entire experience there, but let's imagine you didn't have the worst of it, right? Some had worse, some had not as bad as you. There's a range here. So if you're having that kind of trigger from a smell, just imagine what other men and women are leaving there with. And an island, like we're saying, is a jail. It's not a prison.
Yeah.
People are not even most people are not even convicted of a crime yet,
Yeah.
and have to endure this kind of living conditions, and it's just insane.
So how was your welcome? Like, were the correctional officers open for you to come, or were they like kind of apprehensive?
So we arrived at about 10 a.m. Showed up at the front gate unannounced. The first guard, you know, he seemed a little bit ticked off to have us there. He said, you know, typically you guys show up pre-planned and announced. But after that, I will give credit to the Board of Corrections, Department of Corrections. Their staff, you know, was more than willing to tour us. You know, the chief there ended up spending 6-7 hours with us. I mean, we did not stop. There was no lunch break. There was not even a bathroom break.
Wow.
Two of the legislators I was with are actually, you know, going through Ramadan right now. So to respect them, I mean, I wasn't gonna, you know, sit down and have a meal. So we went the whole day, and then the chief, to his respect, again, went with us to every request we had. He was able to grant for us.
Wow. Okay. And I'm quite sure they probably notified people that you guys were on the way.
So that was our biggest concern. I mean, obviously the island is so massive, and once you know we're there, people were getting a heads up. So we didn't give them a playbook of what we were going to visit in a certain order. We just kind of told them where we were going, and then we just say, okay, we're done here. Let's go to EMTC. Let's go to AK. I messed the acronyms up, but all those places have acronyms.
Yeah. Oh, so that's good. So you guys already knew where you wanted to go.
Yeah. So
there's
an advocacy group called the Releasing Aging People in Prison, and they're amazing. They're advocates that fight for reform at state level, and they're the ones that gave us this playbook. You know, they told us what to look for, what questions to ask, because obviously, I mean, we wouldn't know what's going on in Rikers. These are people that were working on Rikers previously before the pandemic, so they knew the island, you know, very well. They knew kind of the inner workings. They spoke to inmates often, so they kind of knew what the complaints were. So it better prepared us in our questioning and what we wanted to see. We were able to speak with the inmate council, which I didn't even know existed. Right? There's literally a council of inmates who represent each unit of Rikers, and that was an eye-opening experience. You know, we spoke to them one-on-one. We asked the guards and the chief to leave, and it was literally just us and the inmates in a chapel, and we were just talking and just listening to their experience, telling them what we were working on, and trying to see where we as state legislators, where we can really fix the systems that were going on in there. Because to your point about them flagging people, right? Is it AKMC? I think. Regardless, AKMC, I believe, is the largest unit They had about 1,500 people in that unit that day when I was there. Everyone there claimed they had not had recreation for 3 whole months. They had not been outside for 3 whole months. Do you know when that 3-month streak ended?
When you guys got there.
The day we got there.
Of course.
They said we couldn't believe it. They said, we got wrecked out of nowhere today, and now we know why, because you guys are here.
Mm-hmm.
So we spoke to the warden. We asked her what was the reason that they couldn't have rec for 3 months. She made claims that it wasn't 3 months. So you're able to get all sides of these stories, and it's important as legislators, right? I sit on the corrections committee. I'm the chair of the subcommittee on reentry and transitional services. So my biggest focus is Rikers, is our penitentiary system, is our criminal justice space. So I need to hear these stories. I need to see it firsthand because it helps me develop policy and legislate to fix these things. So that was really impactful for me.
Wow. So you say you sit on the corrections committee.
Yeah.
So, what is your roles or duties for sitting on a corrections committee?
So in the state legislature, we have 20 or 30 some odd committees, ranging from agriculture to aging to youth to corrections to labor. So I sit on 5 committees, one of them being corrections. So corrections has to do with what you think it would. It has to do with the correctional system. So that is everything from the Department of Corrections and the officers there to the inmates, to the penitentiary system, to policy around it, to everything and anything in between that falls under state purview. We have the ability to have oversight, to develop policy, to rescind policy. So this is just state law that affects how we handle our jail systems.
Okay. So I know there was recently, this is April. So last month they stopped the solitary confinement.
Yeah.
So how are they gonna?
So that was a big reason. That was a big reason we went to Rikers.
Because of that.
So we passed what's called halt solitary. It does not end solitary confinement as much as I would like it to. It doesn't end it as a whole. What it does is it limits solitary to a 15-day maximum, right? We know it is known right now that solitary confinement, when used as punishment, is torture. The United Nations has already put this on record. And we have heard stories time and time again of people who've been on Rikers for months in solitary. Khalif Browder, Leilene Polanco are big stories, and we heard people from the Bronx who have lost their lives as a result of solitary. So unfortunately, when you craft policy, there's compromise. So I would have loved to see solitary gone completely. We reached an agreement where we got solitary to be 15 days maximum, but we also restricted solitary from a lot of protected classes. So elders over 55, people with disabilities, pregnant women. So we really, really limited what solitary is and how correctional officers can use it. So in response to that, they developed these new units called RMAS. And this is the restricted, and they love acronyms, and I'm sorry I don't have the notes with me, but it's called RMAS, and I'm forgetting what the terminology stands for. But we went to Rikers to see what those units were. The Board of Corrections was having public hearings on these new units, and they had not produced photos of how they look, and they were going to decide whether or not how they would implement this. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to see how these things look and how they differ from solitary, and it was not much different.
What was the difference?
This is how I'm going to describe the difference. So we know solitary to be an 8-foot by 10-foot box, a toilet, a sink, and a bed. That's it, right? In a cell. These new units are exactly what I just described, with the exception of they have like a day room directly in front of it. So think of it, this is the worst way to put it, but think of like a tiny, tiny house being the 8-foot by 10-foot box. Mm-hmm. The day room is the front yard. So maybe another 6 feet in front of that cell with more cages around it and a desk and a TV. So where solitary is considered 23-hour lockdown in the cell, mm-hmm. it's considered out of cell time if they're now in their extended cage. But still a cage.
It's still a cage. It just extended the cage.
It's solitary. So it's like, again, if we don't see these things in person, how do we legislate, right? Yeah. Is the law really impactful? do I go home to my constituents and say, listen, we restricted solitary confinement heavily on Rikers Island, but now we have to ask ourselves, did we? Because look at how, the Board of Corrections has now kind of maneuvered a way around this law, right? So it's like, this is this cat and mouse game we have to play as legislators. Like we're well intentioned, right? Like I said, I would love to see solitary removed completely. Mm-hmm. We were able to pass this law that has taken years to pass. This law did not just come out of nowhere. This has been 7 years in the making or more. And then now we reach this point where this is a new solitary. So it's tough sometimes.
This is crazy. I was like I said before, I was on Rikers Island for like 2 years.
Yeah.
While I was on Rikers Island, they would allow prisoners to work in the solitary confinement. So I would work there. I worked there for probably like until I was sentenced and went upstate.
Yeah.
So the things that I saw, it's crazy. Like, brothers are really going crazy in those boxes.
Yeah.
Like losing their minds.
I mean,
literally losing their minds in there.
What do we expect? There's nothing there. There's no stimulation. So it's like, again, how do you want someone to go pay for their crimes and then come out of that system and just hop back into society, get a job, and act like nothing happened? It's traumatic. It's torture.
Exactly.
So we have to change these systems to work better for people. We have to stop looking at inmates and people who commit crimes as second, third class citizens because of one action, the worst of their actions of their entire life.
Yes.
If we're going to judge everyone on the worst action of their entire life, then we're all going to be looked at in the worst possible manner, right? There's nothing of substance to look at anybody with. We're human. We make mistakes. But let's work past that. Let's fix that. But that's the problem with our systems here.
Do you think there's a price on justice?
When you say a price on justice, you mean like actual monetary value, or
yes,
to give someone justice, or a price on someone now going through the system?
Someone going through the system.
I don't want to frame. I know a lot of conversations take place, and there's always talks of private prisons and the prison industrial complex, which I'm not diminishing at all. But I do believe it's large. It's a larger myth than the reality, right? The belief is that there's tons of private prisons out there that are in this game for profit, which they are. But there's not as many in New York State as you'd believe. There are actually more state penitentiaries than private prisons. Even still, is there money associated in the prison system? Absolutely. And that's the problem. When you have profit involved, when you have money involved in these systems, it becomes nearly impossible to dismantle them.
Yeah.
In my office in Albany, I have furniture. I have a sofa, a chair, nothing grand, simple furniture. You know who created that furniture?
Oh, I know.
Prisoners.
I know.
When we were in the pandemic and we produced God knows how many gallons of sanitizer, prisoners produced that, right? And you know very well these prisoners are being paid 15 cents an hour, 60 cents an hour, whatever it may be. It's a slave labor. It is literally it's come from the Jim Crow era. We abolished slavery. We just repackaged it and made the prison system that is excluded from minimum wage standards, and it is just a repackaging of slave labor. And the problem is too many industries are relying upon this slave labor to ever see it abolished.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to start. We have to start with the money. We cannot be relying on these systems of prisoners to produce our products. Or if you're going to do that, abide by a minimum wage. Mm-hmm. I mean, people are giving skilled labor. I heard a story of a woman who was a sheet metal worker in prison. Do you know what a sheet metal worker makes out in New York City and working on a high rise? Yeah. You're making $50, $60 an hour. She made 67 cents an hour.
Yeah.
The same skill as brothers and sisters down in Manhattan doing that job. Mm-hmm. So what is the difference? because she's locked up in a cage, she loses all her rights. So that's the problem. So your question, is there a price on justice? In one way, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we have to remove the money involved in order to reform these systems.
So when you hear the term clean slate, what comes to mind? What do you think about?
I think about the Clean Slate Act right now we have in New York. It's a bill to wipe people's slate clean, where it's like, again, not to judge you on your past actions. If you've unfortunately committed a crime, if you've unfortunately been involved in a criminal justice system, you paid your debt to society. No longer should you have to wear a scarlet letter on your chest and can't get access to housing. You can't get a job. Like, we create too many barriers for people that have been out of these systems for years and just cannot move on with their lives because that 2 years, that 3 years, that 6 months in jail, that one mark on your record inhibits you from doing anything. Getting custody of your children, I mean, you name it, and that system will block you from something in life. So clean slate to me is giving people an opportunity with no prohibition, to move forward.
So does the Clean Slate Act, is that also about ending parole or probation?
So the Clean Slate Act is different from the parole reform we're working on. We're working on all these, and we're walking and chewing gum at the same time, right? So there's pushes to reform the parole system because we know parole is just a setup. Plain and simple, parole is a setup for once you're released to find a way to get you back in there. I spoke to individuals in Rikers. Maybe I think 1/3 of Rikers right now are on technical parole violations. Yeah. Not even a crime. You're in jail because you didn't get home. You didn't get home at 9 o'clock at night. You're in jail. I spoke to a guy who was doing. It broke my heart. He's doing another 18 months because he missed some phone calls.
Yeah.
How do you lose 18 months of your life for missing phone calls? Yeah. You know how many phone calls I miss? It's like, who sets these systems up?
Yeah. And the crazy thing is that you can't have police contact. They say no police contact, but police contact constitutes just what that means, contact. Like if I stop and talk to an officer, that's police contact. Yeah. If an accident happens and the officer takes down names, that's police contact.
If you're a witness to another crime, it's police contact. So again, the parole system, we have the worst one here in New York by far.
Oh, it's crazy.
It is literally just set up for you to come right back to this system. And the Clean Slate Act, I think, will be one of the most transformational acts we can do in New York. So that bill is held by Senator Zelma Myrie in the state Senate, and that bill is to automatically expunge your record after a certain amount of years. So the language is still kind of being back and forth. I think last I heard was after 7 years of misdemeanor, or 3 years of misdemeanor be erased, and after 7 years of felony be erased, which gives people that opportunity, like I said, to move forward in life.
Exactly.
I mean, you have people who have a crime from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and it still impedes them to this day. And it's like, are we not changed people? Have people not changed over 15, 20 years? Are we still to judge them from an action of when they were maybe a kid?
Or they just made a mistake. Yeah. Okay, so moving away from as far as like prison issues, I want to ask you, so what's your views on how the Biden administration is handling immigration reform?
I haven't followed his federal policy too much. Overall, I think Biden is poised to be, honestly, one of the most exceptional presidents in a long, long time. In terms of immigration reform, I've heard the stories now what's going on at the border. I don't think they're lining up with a lot of the promises and kind of terminology he used on his campaign trail. So for that, I mean, we have to be open and criticize him, right? It's not, I'm a Democrat, he's a Democrat, doesn't mean I'm going to just, give him the rubber stamp of approval. If you made a promise, if this was a campaign push, then you have to stand by that. As the commander in chief, then you have to stand by your immigration policy. So let's see how he moves forward. He has an address tonight to Congress, and let's see how he moves forward in immigration policy.
Exactly. So I heard about. Some of them actually told me about this, but I didn't know about it. So they said that New York lost a seat in the House after, I guess, the Senate count.
The census.
I said the Senate count. The census count.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that?
It was frustrating. So we had the census last year, and there were, I don't want to call them rumors, but basically experts were projecting that we would lose 2 congressional seats. So we were in fear. I mean, this is representation. This is what determines the Electoral College and how we pick presidents. This is what determines, how we pass federal law. We know New York is a highly democratic state. We want that representation. So myself, I did a lot of census outreach. I know other colleagues and activists and organizations that really worked hard to count every single person. I have a lot of people in my district that are undocumented, and we worked hard to make sure they were counted, because all that matters is a count of who is here. It does not matter your citizenship, nothing. We need a count because this is what allocates federal funding for the next 10 years. When you want to talk about food stamp, when you want to talk about public housing, that is all based on the census. So we are undercounted. We do not get adequate money. Now, to talk about representation, if we don't have an adequate count, we don't get our congressional representation. What was great was we didn't lose 2, right? We were expected to lose 2. We're losing 1, but it was so frustrating because you know how short we were of not losing that 1 seat?
What was it, 98 votes or something? I mean, votes.
89 people.
89 people.
If we would have counted 89 more people, we would have never lost a congressional seat. And now this is a decision that is permanent for the next 10 years. We know what a lot can happen in 10 years. 2011 was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Barack Obama was in his first term, his presidency. I mean, that is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And now we cannot fix this until 2030. So it's frustrating because it's 89 people. Yeah. We could have crossed over that threshold and not lost representation, but unfortunately, we can't cry over spilled milk, right? We're at this point.
That's true. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Is there anything you want to say to the people?
I mean, whoever's watching, thank you, one, for watching and, staying informed and listening to Ja's show. This is informative. This is important information to share with family and friends. If you want to stay connected with me, all of my social media handles are at Kenny Burgos NY. There you go, right there. So feel free to reach out to me, my email, whatever you like. Anything I can be helpful, or I'll point people in the right direction. So I thank you for having me on. This is great.
Thank you, Kenny. I really appreciate it. And people, please like, comment, subscribe. If you like what you see, you like what you hear, comment, subscribe, share it. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, thank you, brother. Take care.
Take care.